This is a heist for the Toronto Maple Leafs as some rumors and reports are starting to circulate surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs and one particular player. We're going to break down exactly who that is and discuss what this means going forward as trade reports continue to pick up and rumors continue to escalate, folks. Before we can do it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, your support has been unbelievable. We are on the road to 25,000 subscribers. We're getting closer and closer each day. So you're going to help us towards that goal. You guys have been absolute beasts. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. There's a lot to go over today. A lot of Mitch Marner talk, of course, a lot of different things going on. But there is a lot of other moves that the Leafs are going to have to make, even aside from, of course, John Tavares, Matthew Nyes, Mitch Marner, and those core three, the guys who are going to be free agents or restricted free agents this, now and into the course of the offseason here, once the playoffs end. This is going to be very interesting, but there's one player that we're going to be diving into today, and that is Mason Marchment. But not only him, a player from the Leafs, and this is a trade, ladies and gentlemen. So David Podnada says Dallas's preference is to try to move Mason Marchment, Ilya Lyubushkin, or Matt Dumba, not Jason Robertson. So, of course, Jason Robertson, Nick Robertson's brother, that's a little bit of foreshadowing there. We're talking about Mason Marchment. Now, of course, it seems that Dallas is going to try to move off of Marchment. There has been a lot of fans out there, even during the playoffs when they were still playing, both the Leafs and the Stars, saying that the Leafs should get, Mason Marchment, add some depth to the bottom six, all these different things. And now that David Painada has come out and said that he is available, a trade seems to be a very good option here for the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially given the fact and looking at what they need. With knowledge we know now, let's assume Mitch Marner is going to be leaving, and let's assume, you still have a bunch of holes, and let's assume John Tavares comes back. This would be a very good fit. And Leafs updates here saying Nick Robertson for Mason Marchment. Sorry, Darius, I think this would be a perfect fit and a bit of a steal for the Leafs, not because Nick Robertson is a bad player and he won't thrive in Dallas, but because given the fit, this seems like an absolutely perfect fit here, at least to me, for a team that you can give Nick Robertson up to, and for a team that's looking to give up a player that, of course, I think has some, more value in the Leafs than he would the Stars, given the depth of the Leafs.
Absolutely. I think this would be a fantastic move for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And given the situation the Dallas Stars are in, I think you can take advantage of it. Now, Mason Marchment, we all know him very well. He used to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. He had some games in the NHL with the Leafs, won the Calder Cup with the Toronto Marlies as well. So, everyone's pretty familiar with him and his game, and he's been doing great things with the Dallas Stars. And he's a player that I think the Maple Leafs could really use, which is ironic because they traded him, or I should say Kyle Dubas traded him for Dennis Mulligan, which was an absolutely horrific trade at the time and, still is, of course. But when you look at everything, considering, yes, he makes $4.5 million, but the Leafs have a ton of cap space right now. Of course, we don't know what's going to, what Matthew Knies' contract's going to look like or John Tavares at the point of this recording. But if you look at it from the Dallas Stars perspective, they want to free up cap space so bad that they are genuinely considering trading Jason Robertson, which is mind-blowing. So clearly they'd rather trade guys like Lyubushkin or Marchment or a couple other guys listed on that list as well. So you can take advantage of this. I mean, an RFA and Nick Robertson makes perfect sense for the Dallas Stars because he's not going to make that much. We can get into projected salaries in a second, but this is the player who, if you put him alongside his brother, which is pretty cool if you think about that, right? He can score a lot of goals. Both of them are goal scorers, right? So this could make a lot of sense for the Dallas Stars to shed some salary, get a player who I think is still, waiting to score 25, 30 goals in this league. And, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you got a guy who can score. He's going to be scoring a little bit less, right? But he's a heavy body and a physical presence and a guy that can help you win in the playoffs. This makes a lot of sense to me. And it's not just going out and getting a bigger, heavier body just for the sake of doing it. Marchment's a good player, right? So, this makes perfect sense, I think, for both teams. Obviously, there's a couple logistics. Is it probable that it's going to happen? I don't know exactly, right? But I think that it makes perfect sense and something that I think the Leafs should genuinely look into. But the 4.5 is a little rich for, them having to completely reconfigure their bottom six and obviously some of the wings as well, and depending what happens with John Tavares. But it's something that they should at least take a look at because, again, it just makes perfect sense.
And of course, Nick Robertson is an RFA. So here, I'm player and interested to see possibly get moved and maybe thrive is Nick Robertson. Despite limited minutes, he was really good offensively. The advanced analytics, I mean, you could see like the potential is there. I don't think he's ever going to hit that stride and that potential with the Leafs, which is why, I mean, again, we had the whole discourse last offseason about trading him. Didn't happen. Let's not forget, folks, Nick Robertson requested a trade last offseason. So it's not like he's, familiar to this. If the Leafs traded Robertson for Marchment and he's seemingly, big wing move, Robbie would go on to score 25 goals, 25 assists next year in Dallas, while Marchment would put up 15, 15 as a Leaf, wouldn't he? I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. I know you're a lot higher on Nick Robertson than I am. I do think ultimately he would be better with the Leafs, but also I don't think that this is necessarily a good way to view a trade for the Leafs right now. Like, yes, let's say Nick Robertson goes out and he scores 25 goals, 25 assists. I mean, yeah, it would obviously sucks to give him up, but if you're getting back Marchment, let's say he puts up 20 goals and 20 assists, or even a little bit lower than Nick Robertson, but it gives a lot of intangibles. He has size. He's responsible, at least defensively compared to Nick Robertson. He will help winning hockey more and fits in Berube's system a lot more. So I don't think that it's going to be two teams can win a trade here if this happens, or maybe one team will lose the trade. Of course, that's still up in the air. But the Dallas, and you can see here, everybody is talking about this Nick Robertson idea, even back to May 22nd when people were talking about it before the reports were firm about Mason Marchment leaving. And it all has to do with the production that you can kind of assume that, Marchment will give. And of course, to a degree, what you're hoping Nick Robertson can give. And ladies and gentlemen, talk about, I guess, opposites in players here. So Nick Robertson, 5'9", which actually matters here. 15 goals, 7 assists. He had a really bad year last year, all things considered. Mason Marchment, 22 goals, 25 assists. So even if he tails off a little bit, those are much, much better numbers. He's 6'5" winger putting up 22 goals. So Darius, I love Mason Marchment, former Leaf, all these different things. Horrible trade. I mean, not surprising. It was Kyle Dubas there for, a little bit, wasn't great at trading. But regardless of that, this makes all the sense in the world, and I think it would be truly a heist for the Leafs, but I also don't think it would be necessarily a bad deal for the Stars either. I just think given the way that it works for both sides here, especially for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're getting rid of an asset who does have some value. But again, this isn't about Nick Robertson having similar value to Mason Marchment, because I don't think he does necessarily. I think there's a leverage play here, and of course there'll be some teams calling him Mason Marchment, and you can always use depth pieces. But at least Dallas will get back not only Jason Robertson's brother, some goodwill there, but also a guy who does have the ceiling of a 30, 35 goal scorer.
And heading into next season, who would you rather have on your second line left wing? I mean, maybe you can put Bobby McMann in there, who during the regular season we've seen flashes of greatness, right? Hasn't really figured it out in the playoffs so far. Would you want Nick Robertson up there? I mean, yeah, he could probably score some goals, but I don't think having Nick Robertson on your team or not is the difference between the Leafs making the playoffs. That is for sure. Or would you want Mason Marchment there, like you brought up, 6'5", and he's scoring over 20 goals a year? He can still chip in for points. He's not going to be a point a game player, but he can score in the playoffs. He gets to the dirty areas. He has a big body who likes to throw the body around. You need more players like that. That's what we've been talking about. You want to change the DNA. This is a guy who plays the way that you want more of the Leafs to play. They need to get, not just getting bigger and heavier for the sake of it, but guys who can actually put the puck in the back of the net and, play with purpose. And this is a guy that can do that. Again, I wish that they never traded him in the first place, because it sucks that you're going to have to go out and, acquire a player that you already had before. But this makes sense. The situation makes sense. Dallas is looking to shed some cap. He makes quite a bit for what he does, but I think he could make sense, of course, on a different team and on the Leafs. This is the type of guy that they want. This is what they want to play as. So, and a lot of people keep bringing up, how are you going to replace Marner? It's not about that, right? You got to build and think of the team a little bit differently now, because yes, he scores 100 points. Yes, you get to the playoffs, but then what happens after that? And I do believe, because, we've been talking about Mitch Marner leaving, and, is John Tavares staying? Who are they going to bring in? Is it Mason Marchment? All these moving pieces. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I think, are still going to make the playoffs next year. They have the goaltending. The defense is still set. You have Austin Matthews. You have William Nylander. If you fill out the rest of the lineup with guys like this who play the right way, you're going to find success. You're going to make the playoffs. And even if you make it in a wild card or the third spot, look at the Florida Panthers. They don't care where they make the playoffs, what spot they make the playoffs, and they know that their game works and that they're hard to play against. So, you got to start thinking of making moves like this, and it just makes sense. Nick Robertson can go play with his brother in Dallas. Maybe he does put up 20 goals, 25 goals. Good for him. I just don't think he's going to do it with the Leafs. And whether he's on the team or not, that doesn't matter, right? Like it's not the line between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I feel like a guy like Mason Marchment can help them in the areas that they need to help the most.
4.5 million for those wondering there. Nick Robertson makes a lot less, projected 1-2 million. Very interesting. Would you rather Mitch Marner, or would you rather Brad Marchand and Mason Marchment? Because that's probably around the salary that you're going to be talking about. And they'll, of course, get other pieces there, whether that's via trade. You had to fill out the rest of the team. But let me know down below in the comments right now, would you prefer Mitch Marner, one of Mitch Marner, or Brad Marchand and let's say Mason Marchment, sorry, for example, because that's, again, it's not a 1-for-1 comparison or anything like that, but that's the type of moves they would have freedom to make. Maybe Marchand will cost a little bit more, but regardless, then if when Mitch Marner leaves Toronto and joins what I think is going to be the Carolina Hurricanes. But regardless, let us know down below your thoughts are on all that. A ton of new reports and news are dropping. We're going to keep you up to date as things continue to get crazier and crazier. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for watching. See you there.